Welcome to Poemalogues. My name is Dasha Kelly Hamilton. I am the Poet Laureate for the city of Milwaukee and for the state of Wisconsin. Poemalogues is my opportunity to bring together some pretty cool humans to fall into an honest, open conversation about life between the lines. And today we're going to have a conversation about joy. And that's already a good start for any day, for any dialogue. Joy lends itself to happiness. It lends itself to dreaming. It lends itself to better days, to where joy becomes something that's essential, its own essential work. And I have a poem that I found that speaks to that. But first, we're going to have a conversation with an incredible talent across the board who has found a way to make joy a daily priority. Please welcome Miss Lora Hyler to the stage. Hello, Laura. How are you?
Hello,
Thank you for being here
Dasha.
today.
Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, so this is one of those smiles where you have that person that you see at the regular coffee shop. You just recognize their backpack and you lift your coffee mug, or you know someone in the hall and you don't have a chance to talk. That is this moment for me. So I am familiar with the level of excellence of your work, and I'm
Oh,
excited to
thank
learn
you.
more about what goes into it. I just know that I just like the way that you smile, and every time that I see your name someplace, it's something good going on. So I'm excited to get to know you a little bit better.
Thank you. Mutual Admiration Society. So right back at you.
I appreciate it. I welcome that. I welcome that. I welcome that. I welcome that. So, especially to enter this with joy.
Uh-huh.
Oh, we're gonna get to how of the topics how you chose that, because I'm always interested. Sometimes it's slanted on what's happening by the day, what's happening in the news. Sometimes it's just something you've just needed to lean into. So one of my favorite questions to ask people is to tell me your whole life story, because I'm always interested in where they start, how much
Sure.
story they tell, and the worries sometimes they have about getting their own story wrong, which of course you cannot do. So how you, of all the things, found your way to joy, we'll get to that part, but tell us your whole life story.
Whole
Tell
life
us.
story.
Yeah.
All right. So I was born and raised in Racine,
Okay.
and very much a multicultural neighborhood, and spent a lot of time with my parents in church and visiting friends and family around the city. And so I say it was fairly idyllic. I mean, we had a park that was nearby. We were on our bikes. We were playing kickball, having a great time. So I was a voracious reader. My parents started us off with like children's Bible books, and then we graduated to encyclopedias, and I just could not get enough. We walked to school, and I walked to school with a book in my hand every single day, to school, back from school. And I kind of reflect now and go, oh my gosh, I'm surprised that I survived my childhood, because I'm sure there were cars that were literally swerving around me, because once I got into a book, I was in a book. Come home and then, get right back into a book. So I think I was always interested in adventure stories. That led to reading, just a lot of stories about kids doing fun things, which led to the type of stories I write today. And it also really led to a lot of curiosity and wonder about the world. And so I was really thinking about writing my own stories at a pretty young age. And so I literally was writing what I call little novelettes when I was probably like 8, 9, 10 years old. And it led to my career in journalism. So I've worked for the NPR and the ABC affiliates in Milwaukee, WUWM and WISN, did a couple of years with Channel 4 as a community commentator for one of their afternoon newscasts, and had a corporate career at We Energies, General Communications, a lot of corporate communications work, a lot of writing, a lot of interviewing people, a lot of project management, and then started my own public relations and marketing company, Hyler Communications, in 2001. So I just recently celebrated my 20th anniversary, and have been very fortunate to work with major universities and corporations, and also some nonprofits and independents throughout the city. And so it's just been a wonderful ride for me. And I just really enjoy kind of digging in, figuring out what story people have to tell, and then helping them promote their products and services throughout the country. So it's been a wild journey and a lot of fun.
Those two things together, not a bad deal. A wild journey and a lot of fun. I think you're winning. I think you're winning. Now I have to ask, are you still showing up everywhere with a book?
Very much so. Very much so. I was in line for my vaccine shot yesterday and I had a book of poetry, which you're in, by the way. So this was Wisconsin Fellowship of Poets book. And I was having a great time just immersing myself while I had a few minutes to spare.
Nice. Oh my goodness. So a couple of things are happening in my chest right now. One, this love of being in company with another library kid. Right. And that you went to adventure and science fiction or and I'm always fascinated by when folks lean into that. So as much as I, of course, also love to write and to read and have been the library kid forever, I still will read those books and go, wow.
Yeah, it was the adventure stuff for me. It was like the Pippi Longstocking. So now I'm dating myself, but you know, it was that whole idea of a kid kind of being on their own and almost raising themselves, because I was super independent as a child, and as long as you know, got back home before dusk, you were fine, and the neighborhood looked out for you. So, you know, no worries there. But I would say the sci-fi came later, and maybe because I got very interested in STEM through my work. I was corporate communications manager at We Energies, working with the information technology department, and also doing lots of recruiting of IT professionals. And so there was something about writing my first children's book, which I am a full-time children's book author now with a 4-book deal, and we can talk a little bit more about that later. But it was very interesting to me to introduce science to kids through the pathway of superheroes and spy gadgets. So I'm just having a wonderful time with that combo. And the kids, their eyes light up when I talk about it, and it's just such a kick for me. So having a good time.
And with that not being your background, I'm assuming that you're a wide-eyed kid when you learn about you, because you have to learn the science and the gadgetry to be able to write it.
Absolutely. And it's so much fun. So you talk about being able to be a kid every day. That's my gig, and that's what I do. And so, you know, funny story. So I decided to include the superhero element, and this was all sort of inspired by, so my husband and I have one child. He is now an adult, and he was a competitive swimmer from the time he was 6 years old till through high school graduation. We've lived in Glendale for 28 years, so we're in a nice suburban neighborhood, very multicultural, and we were one of the homes where kids would congregate because he was an only child and he was constantly, you know, busy and doing things. And so I wanted to it was sort of like the easy conversation of young boys that captivated me. And I thought, oh, this would be so cool to write a book. And then I was going to work in some of those elements about the swimming, but it really became like the superhero. And then I thought I'd write about a science. And I thought, well, I can't sustain volcanic explosions for 3 books. So I started doing some research and absolutely was fascinated by CRISPR-Cas9 gene editing technology. So that's what I'm writing about, and that's spanning all 3 books. And how I came across that was I had like a Time magazine, and I started reading about this, and this technology, this science is described as, for the first time, humans have the ability to edit their own species. So that's pretty powerful stuff. And then the spy gadgets came about because my husband and son and I took a trip to the International Spy Museum in Washington, D.C., and they had these amazing gadgetry, all these objects and things that were used in history for spying. And I was just absolutely captivated. And I was probably more psyched than our kid was. So I'm crawling around the tunnels and doing all kinds of crazy stuff. And so my seventh grade superheroes who are working on this technology in their advanced seventh grade science classroom are very much into spy gadgets. I have fun. I try to have fun every day.
Oh, my whole heart is warm with this idea. Their advanced seventh grade class. Does the teacher know that they're making spy gadgets?
This
Yes,
is what
please
they
tell the
look
people.
like. So this is the first book, The Stupendous Adventures of Mighty Marty Hayes. And so it's got the 4 kids, and they will continue through the 3-book series. And book number 2 is going to feature the lone girl of the quartet, Aisha. So
Come
I'm going
through,
to have,
Aisha.
yes. So I'm working on that now.
Uh, Outside of your life love of literature, and you were a library kid, and you have a soul root to these stories, and you're a writer.
Oh,
All
yeah.
those things set aside, how do you
Yeah.
keep that connection so that your work as this super grown woman is still fresh for middle school kids? How do you? So what's the part that goes in the middle as a
Yeah.
children's book writer?
Sure. One huge blessing of embarking on this career, because I didn't mention that prior to this, I was writing short stories and essays and screenplays. And I spent time going to Hollywood trying to sell screenplays.
Okay.
So it wasn't until I got into the children's arena, I think, that I found my sweet spot. And so for me, the thing that really makes it come to life is to get input from kids at different stages of the writing. And so I feel like one of my best accolades came from one of my critique partners who's right here in Whitefish Bay, and her son wrote at the top of the first page, "This totally sounds like a kid." And I was like, yay! And it's so funny that that still stands out 3 years later. But I get constant feedback. I'm fortunate to go to places where, it's a book festival and kids are there and they come up and you talk to them, and, you constantly get this reinforcement about what you're writing, and you listen to the way kids talk. So it's fun. I enjoy being around kids, and I'm surrounded by kids in my neighborhood, and I've gotten to know them, and they come to my book events. And we also have a summer picnic in our neighborhood that I helped found. And the kids are, you hear the chatter of kids all the time. So you
That
just
is
kind of stay true to the language. Yeah.
wonderful. Do you have any young people that have given you some harsh feedback or some critical advice? And I
I
ask that
really,
we often, so that we're not moving in the gesture of inviting young people and making them feel like they're involved. I mean, there's a heart space to that too.
uh-huh.
But when you really ask for their input and their advice,
I think they're really honest. That's the
mhm.
great thing about kids. I mean, obviously, I go through a professional editor and I have critique partners and that kind of thing, but it's really cool to hear from kids. And so I have kids. So when I show up for the summer picnic, the kids inevitably come around and they're asking me questions. And one of the things is, why don't you do this? And why don't you do that? Which is really hilarious for me, because I'm like, okay, I guess I opened the door here. I have like a neighborhood full of young critics, and it's just really cool. Or I will go and do a school presentation, and the kids will raise their hands asking a question, and it has something to do with, have you thought about this? I mean, so I get feedback all the time, and I just
Mhm.
kind of store it away a little bit, and who
Hmm.
knows, I'll show up in the writing one day.
Hmm. How do you, when you kind of look at this landscape of this journey, you called it an adventure, and it sounds like it definitely has been that.
Oh yeah.
Does it feel that these have been adventures in phases or stages, or does it feel like it's that all comes together?
I try to be as deliberate and as intentional as possible when it
Mm.
comes to, for example, when I go to schools, I want to make sure that I'm addressing, well, as many kids as possible, that I'm allotting time for as many questions as possible, and then just really kind of finding out a little bit about what's on their mind and trying to make writing seem accessible to them. I don't want them to think of, wow, you're an author, you must live this privileged life of an author and I'll never get there. You know, you have to make it believable for them. So I really tell them what it takes, a lot of hard work, a lot of research, a lot of dedication, and getting that writing done. And so it seems like it all came together. But I love to travel. Okay. So I have been so fortunate to do things like, hey, my book is coming out. The Tucson Festival of Books in Tucson, Arizona is one of the top book festivals in the country. Why don't I go there? And I'll just take off and go and not know a soul, you know, to do things like that. So I've been fortunate to get to France. I'll be going again next year. I was going to go this September, and then it interfered with a trip to California for a 2-week residency. So I just sort of pull it all together. I look at it like, where do I want to go? What audiences do I want to reach? And then it just kind of flows. And then you have these happy accidents, like every national talk show has a form usually on their website that says, be on our show. And they'll ask you questions, and they're trying to design a show with a specific topic, but sometimes it's open-ended. And so during the COVID shutdown, I remember Live with Kelly and Ryan, so Kelly Ripa and Ryan Seacrest, definitely one of the top talk shows in the nation, was looking for families kind of to talk about what they were doing during COVID times. And I thought, well, gee, I've written a book about, you know, to help children cope with coronavirus and COVID. So I just filled out the form, and lo and behold, my husband, son, and I, and our pet tortoise, Speedy, wound up on national television live in September.
The tortoise got TV time. The tortoise got TV time.
The tortoise not only got TV time, but he lives in the lower level in a very comfortable habitat. And we brought him upstairs. My son brought him upstairs in a box. And I don't know how much you know about tortoises, but their heads are usually in the shell if they see that they're getting attention and somebody's holding them or tapping on them or whatever. He had his head out the entire time. So Speedy made his national television debut.
Speedy. Oh, Speedy the tortoise.
So we still
merch. He has his own Instagram page now.
So what an experience, though. What's that?
What an experience, though. And just watching you, you are beaming. You are having the time.
I am having the time of my life.
Of your life.
I am. And it's funny because I've had this corporate career, and especially corporate consulting. And I've had some kind of odd conversations like, wow, we need to move this along. Like, I'm not busy enough, you know, and they're like, we're paying you hourly, but I'm not busy enough. But I think it's because I am that person who's always seeking out the wonder and the joy, and I want to be learning something new. I want to be, you know, bringing this project to levels that perhaps they haven't thought of. And so I really want to keep it going. And so that's sort of how I approach my writing. I'm not afraid of research. I'm not afraid to churn out pages, and I put a lot of time into it. And then I love that journey of getting out and meeting the people. And that's a wonderful thing to be able to do.
That part too.
Yeah.
You mentioned the research. I've often explained to people, I know more. I have so much random information because I needed you. And you also get sucked into, not what they sucked in, you fall into all of this information because we're curious just to write this one line. Just to describe, is it a pecan tree or is it a sassafras? Is it what kind of a
exactly?
Well, what do I know about? And then you have all this information about trees and gophers and all the possible things. Right. So all this gadgetry that you have done this research on. You might be a whole CIA weapons NASA repository sitting over there sipping your coffee.
Oh my gosh, it's amazing. Trust me, I can get on the website today of the International Spy Museum and spend a good hour just seeing what's new and what's going on. And it's a lot of fun.
That is something else. Well, this is a great entry. Is this how you entered Wonder? Or Wonder Joy?
Wonder Joy. Yeah, definitely.
Did a blend.
Definitely. I mean, I try to live it, and probably I had the most wild story during the height of COVID, like let's say last summer when we were really starting to figure out that this wasn't going to end in a couple of weeks, that this was going to go on for months and months and months. And I became aware of this Emory Global Health Institute challenge where they were trying to get authors to write books to help children cope with coronavirus. And I decided to enter the competition. And then I said to myself, well, I want to get this book published whether I win this competition or not. So I approached my publisher, approached my illustrator, and we created this book, which I will briefly hold up, which is Our Bodies Stay Home, Our Imaginations Run Free. And my illustrator, by the way, is in Barbados, and he's been wonderful on this journey with me. And so I needed to get out to write because I move around normally. I'm at coffee shops, I'm at bookstores, you name it. And so what I did was you could find me at a park on a park bench, you know, writing. And if it was really, really cool, sitting in the park in my car writing, because I just needed to move around and I was just going to move around where it was safe. So I'm always improvising and I'm always just kind of bringing that, you know, kid wonder and joy to what I'm doing as much as possible. Not to say that I don't have my adult downer moments where, you know, we're facing something in like what's going on in the world this year and last year with racial injustice and a social reckoning. I think that we're all undergoing. And so, but you think about it from like a kid's viewpoint and you think about whether it's something that you can possibly address or mention or, you know, respond to a question that a kid might have. But I'm always thinking of it from their viewpoint. And then it brings a little bit more of a, you know, perspective to me as an adult. So,
and that's a space of a particular power. You know, when you're talking about giving voice and making space for young people, and especially when you describe considering experience from their perspective. And as adults, we can often say that, but we're not really.
Right.
Because we haven't been coached to, we haven't been forced to, and we're adults and we're grown-ups and we have to make everything right and make sense. And that one heartbeat of allowing that space for a young person to give their opinion, their experience even is informative, and it honors the fact that they're little humans, but they're still humans here figuring this out with us.
And they're smarter than we think. They're smarter than we think. It blows me away, you know, talking to 4th and 5th graders. It just totally blows me away. We can probably mention one project that I'm also working on, which is Sharp Literacy, which is located here in Glendale. And I know you've done a book with them, and I appreciate the introduction to their organization through you. Sharp Literacy is now working on their latest book, and we are talking to students throughout the Milwaukee, Waukesha area through a format called Young Author Workshops. And these kids are being encouraged to write their own poems and essays and even illustrations. And the wisdom that just kind of jumps out when someone's like 8, 9, 10 years old is just amazing to me. So I really do have a lot of respect for kids. And if you really give kids a chance to just sort of talk and be themselves, you'll be surprised at what comes out of their mouths. So they pick up on a lot. They pick up on a lot, and we have to honor that wisdom in these kids.
Different from a kid having the answer. A lot of grown-ups don't have the answer, but man, they've got a lot of great ideas, right?
For sure.
Fourth grade is my favorite. Fourth grade is my favorite.
That's a great age. Yeah.
So I would love to hear this, where all of this led you to, which poem it directed you to. So you have, if there anything else, you've got the books that are coming out, you said in the fall yet?
So I have a 3-book series. So the Stupendous Adventures of Mighty Marty Hayes was the first in this series of multicultural superhero science and spy gadgets.
Say it all again. The Stupendous Adventures of Mighty
Marty Hayes. Okay. And so book 2 in the series will be the Stupendous Adventures series, Aisha, Scientist, Superhero, Spy. I may switch that around, but that's her 3 strengths. And so that book should be published this summer. So really looking forward to that and getting back on the road with that if everything's safe and good to go. If not, I'll do my virtual visits. And I'm really looking forward to that because I thought it was very important to put a young African-American girl front and center. She's super smart, she's super kind. It's a book about friendship. It brings in some really interesting elements that I've gotten great feedback on, including I wanted Mighty Marty Hayes to have gotten his superpowers from his granny, who used her powers to help Dr. Martin Luther King during the Civil Rights era. So I have kids going, whoa, Dr. Martin Luther King? And then I'm spotlighting some Black spies who were real spies in history, like Odell Bennett Lee and Harriet Tubman and some others. And so, it's all just interwoven within the story, but the focus is definitely front and center on the quartet of kids.
Absolute time of your life, Lora. You are having the absolute time.
And I'm so fortunate that my husband is like fully into this journey and loving it and promoting it to his coworkers in the Washington, D.C. area and every place else. So it's like, it's a fun journey. My son may be a little bit more appalled.
I was going to ask, how's your son dealing with Mama what?
I'm constantly saying he was the inspiration for the main character. And I'm not
Let him have it.
Sure.
Let him have it. Let him have it. If you want the holidays to go, just let him have it. Just let him have it. Just let him have
it.
Exactly. Well, let's hear what poem did all this take you to?
Yeah, so I mentioned about how I loved adventure stories as a kid, and as I started to age, I became a huge fan of Maya Angelou. So I'd love to read her poem, Still I Rise.
Absolutely.
Okay, here we go. Still I Rise by Maya Angelou. You may write me down in history with your bitter, twisted lies. You may tread me in the very dirt, but still, like dust, I'll rise. Does my sassiness upset you? Why are you beset with gloom? 'Cause I walk like I've got oil wells pumping in my living room. Just like moons and like suns with the certainty of tides, just like hopes springing high, still I'll rise. Did you want to see me broken, bowed head and lowered eyes, shoulders falling down like teardrops, weakened by my soulful cries? Does my haughtiness offend you? Don't you take it awful hard, 'cause I laugh like I've got gold mines digging in my own backyard. You may shoot me with your words, you may cut me with your eyes, you may kill me with your hatefulness, but still, like the air, I'll rise. Does my sexiness upset you? Does it come as a surprise that I dance like I've got diamonds at the meeting of my thighs? Out of the huts of history's shame, I rise. Up from a past that's rooted in pain, I rise. I'm a black ocean, leaping and wide, welling and swelling, I bear in the tide, leaving behind nights of terror and fear, I rise. Into a daybreak that's wondrously clear, I rise. Bringing the gifts that my ancestors gave, I am the dream and the hope of the slave. I rise, I rise, I rise.
It just, how some meals just never, that snack is never not, that poem just never doesn't not do the thing.
Oh, I love it. I love it. Yes. Yes.
Thank you for sharing that.
Well, thank you for giving me this format, because I usually am not reading for adults. Usually talking to kids. But I think it's interesting. I think it's interesting to see the journey of our reading material as we age. And so it's like, yeah, kids are picking up on some really interesting reading materials these days.
Absolutely. Thank you for being part of that.
Sure.
Oh, I can't wait for Aisha to come here and wreck shop. It's going to be so great. Thank you for spending time with me. And I'm glad I get a chance to hear the specifics of your excellent story. So I'm really excited.
Thank you so much. And before we go, I should leave you with a tiny little tidbit as to what else I'm working on. So I am at that stage of really wanting to see this series become a television series or a film. And so I am on that path, and I am at the stage of taking meetings. So we will keep you posted.
Definitely. We're claiming things around here, Miss Lady. That's a
Yes,
done deal. That's a done deal
yes,
and
we will
happening.
claim it. Thank you. Thank you. So all the positive energy from all of your viewers, I welcome it. Send up some prayers. Let's get this done.
Let's be stupendous. I love it. 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 And I love that she was unapologetic about meshing together joy and wonder. You know, in the space of being on an adventure, when you have a position where you're able to see this getting up and going to bed every day as the adventure that it is, fraught, yes, and filled with joy and wonder. And to be able to walk that rope with the grace of a Maya Angelou, you cannot go wrong. You cannot go wrong. And the piece that I looked for was that idea of joy being bundled in wonder, being this almost this vitamin, right? This essential nutrient, a tool even, where joy shouldn't be optional. We don't want it to be. So this piece, same instructions that I asked my guests, I put in joy, bliss as a tool poem. And this is what came up. It is a poem by Jacqueline Suskin, and it is Nothing Lasts for Long. The past is not absent. It forms a cloud behind us, sometimes lit by beautiful color, a reflection of what was that illuminates the now with grace, with goodness. Note, though, how even the sky is always changing. Fade from one solid hue to the ghost of another. Our sweet haunt, nostalgia to adorn us, the duality of all we linger in and all we are without. Let it be built on beauty, not a mask, but the might of time that is always bends and sways, the tide that follows the moon, never once the same type of brilliance. Never the same type of brilliance, ever. Doesn't take away the brilliance that has, and we get to celebrate the brilliance that's coming. Looking forward to seeing you with me next week. We'll have another Poemalogue with another incredible Milwaukee guest, and we'll have another conversation about joy or wonder or justice or legacy or you. See you there.